Hey folks, all good out there? Today I'm going to tell you a story that will leave you absolutely speechless. It's about one of the most infamous outlaws of the American Wild West. Get ready for a journey into the world of Billy the Kid. Picture this, a skinny young man, barely 5'7", tall, with messy brown hair and piercing blue eyes. He didn't look threatening at first glance, but this scrawny kid became one of the most feared names in the Wild West, leaving a trail of blood wherever he went. Or at least that's what they say. The burning question: how many lives were cut short by Billy the Kid's deadly accurate bullets? Legend claims 21 men, one for each year of his short life. But is that true? Did this young gunslinger really send that many people to the great beyond? The scorching New Mexico sun beat down on the dusty plains as Henry McCarty, later known as William H. Bonney, or simply Billy the Kid, took his first steps into the world of crime. Born in 1859 in New York, Billy lost his mother at a young age and found himself adrift in a cruel world where the law of the strongest, or the quickest draw, prevailed. They say the first man to fall before his gun was Frank "Windy" Cahill in 1877. Cahill was known for bullying young Billy at the mining camp where they worked in Arizona. The version that circulated through saloons was that after a heated argument at a poker table, Cahill called Billy a coward, pushing him against the wall. Quick as lightning, Billy drew his weapon and fired, hitting Cahill in the chest, who fell right there, on top of the playing cards that revealed his bluff. Blood stained the card suits, mixing with the scattered chips. "He humiliated me every day. I had no choice," Billy supposedly told a companion as he fled on horseback through the dark desert night. But did this story happen exactly like that? Witnesses who were in the saloon that night tell different versions. Some say Cahill was drunk and provoking not just Billy but everyone around. Others claim Billy wasn't even playing poker but just trying to buy a drink at the counter when Cahill approached him. The truth, like grains of sand in the desert, slips through the fingers of history. What we know for certain is that this was the beginning of the legend. After killing Cahill, Billy fled to New Mexico, where he got involved in the famous Lincoln County War, a bloody conflict between two groups fighting for economic and political control of the region. It was during this war that Billy truly gained notoriety. He joined the group known as the Regulators, who worked for John Tunstall, an English rancher. When Tunstall was murdered by men connected to the rival group led by James Dolan, the Regulators swore revenge. On a dark April night in 1878, Billy and other Regulators ambushed Sheriff William Brady and his deputy George Heineman, who were working for Dolan's group. The two men fell riddled with bullets in the middle of Lincoln's main street. Witnesses say Billy approached Brady's body and took a paper from his pocket, an arrest warrant against himself. "I won't be needing this anymore, Sheriff," he supposedly said, tearing the paper into pieces that danced in the wind like dry leaves. But the story doesn't end there, my friends. In the following months, several other men fell during the Lincoln County War. Many of these deaths were attributed to Billy, enhancing his reputation as a ruthless killer. In July 1878, the famous Battle of Lincoln took place, a confrontation that lasted 5 days and ended with Dolan's group setting fire to the house where the Regulators were entrenched. During the desperate escape from the fire and smoke, Billy and his companions exchanged gunfire with their pursuers. Andrew "Buckshot" Roberts, one of Dolan's henchmen, was mortally wounded, adding another name to Billy's list of supposed victims. But here comes a surprising revelation. Modern investigations suggest that many of these deaths, traditionally attributed to Billy, may actually have been the work of other Regulators. It's as if history had chosen a single protagonist for a narrative that involved dozens of armed men. And there's more. Documents recently discovered in the basement of the old Santa Fe courthouse suggest that Billy might have been used as a scapegoat by powerful men in the region who wanted to cover up their own crimes. An anonymous diary, possibly written by a court clerk, mentions, "The Bonney kid didn't kill half the men they say, but it's convenient for many that they think he did." Interesting, isn't it? The story keeps getting more complex. In December 1880, Billy was finally captured by Sheriff Pat Garrett, a former friend who was now hunting him. During the trial, Billy was officially charged with only one death, that of Sheriff Brady. Even so, he was sentenced to hang. But Billy the Kid wouldn't be defeated so easily. In a spectacular escape from Lincoln County Jail, he killed 2 guards, James Bell and Bob Ollinger, adding 2 more names to his macabre list. They say that before shooting Ollinger, Billy said, "Hello, Bob. I'm sending you to hell sooner than you expected. A chilling detail that few know. According to accounts from the time, Billy allegedly reloaded his weapon while humming a lullaby his mother used to sing to him as a child. The image of the young killer, with his characteristic smile and that innocent song on his lips while preparing his gun for another homicide, is blood-curdling. During the following months, Billy the Kid became the most wanted man in New Mexico territory. Posters offering rewards for his head could be seen on every post, in every saloon, at every train station. The legend grew, and with it, the number of deaths attributed to him. On stormy nights in small western towns, mothers would frighten their disobedient children with stories about the terrible Billy the Kid, who would come for them if they didn't behave. He's already killed 20 men, they'd whisper, one for each year of his life. But is this count true? Let's do the math together. We have reliable historical documentation for 1. Frank Cahill in Arizona, 2. Sheriff William Brady during the Lincoln County War, 3. Deputy George Hindman, killed along with Brady, 4. Prison guard James Bell during his escape, 5. Prison guard Bob Ollinger, also during the escape. That gives us a total of 5 historically proven deaths. Pretty far from the 21 of legend, right? But wait, there's more. Documents recently discovered in Pat Garrett's family's private archives reveal that Billy may have participated in at least 3 more murders not officially recorded. One of them would be a professional gambler known only as the Frenchman, who allegedly cheated Billy in a card game in Las Vegas, New Mexico. According to the account, Billy followed the man to his hotel room and confronted him. Witnesses in the next room reported hearing a heated argument followed by a single shot. When the door was broken down, they found the gambler lying with a bullet hole between his eyes, and Billy had already disappeared through the window. Another intriguing case involves 2 Mexican brothers who allegedly stole horses belonging to the regulators. Billy and 2 companions supposedly followed their trail to an isolated cabin near the Mexican border. The brothers' bodies were never found, but a cowboy passing through the region days later claimed to have seen Billy wearing one of the brothers' distinctive hat, recognizable by its peculiar silver decorations. Wanted in a bet, Billy supposedly said, with that characteristic smile of his that never revealed whether he was joking or serious. These cases would add 3 more names to the list, totaling 8 deaths. But history holds even more mysteries. Some historians argue that Billy may have been responsible for several deaths during raids in Mexico, where he and other outlaws often hid from American authorities. An old Mexican bandolero, on his deathbed in 1925, confessed to a priest that he had witnessed El Chivato, as Billy was known in Mexico, execute 4 men in a single shootout in a village near Chihuahua. He shot like the devil himself, the old bandolero reportedly said, quick as lightning and as deadly as death. If we consider this account, the number rises to 12 deaths. Still, we're far from the 21 men of legend. So where did this number come from? Why 21? Some historians suggest the number was inflated by journalists of the time, always eager for sensational stories that would sell newspapers. Others believe Pat Garrett himself, who wrote a biography of Billy shortly after killing him, may have exaggerated the young outlaw's deeds to enhance his own achievement in capturing him. A particularly intriguing theory suggests that the number 21 has a symbolic origin. It represents the 21 years Billy lived. The idea of one man for each year of life created a poetic symmetry that caught the popular imagination. There are also those who argue that some of the homicides attributed to Billy were actually committed by other gang members, but being the most famous, he ended up taking the blame for all of them. Curious, isn't it? History is sometimes more about what we want to believe than about the naked truth. Speaking of naked truth, let's get to the end of this bloody story. On the night of July 14, 1881, Pat Garrett finally cornered Billy the Kid at Pete Maxwell's ranch in Fort Sumner. According to the official account, Billy entered the dark room where Garrett was waiting, unaware of the ambush. When he asked in Spanish, "¿Quién es?" "Who is it?" Garrett recognized his voice and fired twice. One of the bullets hit Billy's heart, killing him instantly. Thus ended, at 21, the life of the notorious outlaw. No trial, no last word, no chance to tell his own version of the story. Or did it really end? Here comes one of the most fascinating twists in this story. Many people believe Billy the Kid didn't die that night. Yes, you heard right. There are theories suggesting Billy actually escaped the ambush and Garrett killed someone else in his place, to end the hunt and gain glory for capturing the famous bandit. In the decades that followed, several elderly men appeared claiming to be the real Billy the Kid. The most famous was Brushy Bill Roberts, who in 1950, at age 90, asked for pardon from the governor of New Mexico, claiming to be the legitimate William H. Bonney. Roberts presented impressive details about Billy's life that supposedly only the real kid could know. He showed scars that would correspond to known wounds of the outlaw, and even recognized old companions from the regulator's days. Could the real Billy the Kid have lived decades after his supposed death, silently watching as his legend grew? Unfortunately, Brushy Bill died before his identity could be completely verified, taking any secrets he might have had to the grave. DNA tests would be impossible since the body of the supposed Billy the Kid buried in Fort Sumner had been lost during a flood years earlier. Another candidate for the real Billy the Kid was John Miller, who lived in Arizona until 1937. On his deathbed, Miller supposedly confessed to his family that he was Billy the Kid. According to his account, he had bribed Pat Garrett to fake his death and allow him to escape to Mexico. Miller described how Garrett had killed a Mexican immigrant who looked like Billy and presented the body as being that of the famous outlaw. As proof, Miller showed strange bullet scars that corresponded to wounds Billy would have suffered during his years as an outlaw. And there's more. Documents recently found in Mexico's National Archive mention an American called William, who arrived in Chihuahua shortly after Billy's supposed death and became a shooting instructor for Mexican rural forces. Coincidence? Maybe not. If any of these stories are true, then the real number of deaths caused by Billy the Kid could be much higher than historical records suggest. After all, he would have lived for many decades beyond 1881. But let's return to the main question. How many men really fell to Billy the Kid's bullets? Based on the most reliable historical evidence, the most probable number is between 8 and 12. Still impressive for a young man who had barely left his teens, but quite distant from the 21 of legend. However, perhaps the exact number isn't the most important thing in this story. What really matters is understanding how this American myth was born, this symbol of rebellion and violence that captures our imagination to this day. Billy the Kid lived at a moment of transition in American history. The Old West was disappearing, with railroads, telegraphs, and civilization rapidly advancing over the last wild frontiers. Men like Billy represented an era that was coming to an end, an era of absolute freedom and the law of the strongest. In this context, it's not surprising that his story was amplified and romanticized. He became a symbol, larger than life, of an America that no longer existed. And the great irony? Billy the Kid probably never wanted to be a bloodthirsty killer. Historical evidence suggests he was dragged into violence by circumstances beyond his control. The death of his mother, the Lincoln County War, the betrayal of friends and authorities. A little-known detail. Billy was literate and liked to read, something rare for young men of his social background at that time. Letters written by him reveal a sharp intelligence and even a certain poetic sensitivity. In one of these letters sent to a friend shortly before his death, he wrote, "Perhaps in another life I could have been something other than what I became. But in this one, the path is already traced, and I must follow it to the end." Profound words for a supposed ruthless killer, don't you think? Another fascinating aspect is that, contrary to the image of the lonely and cruel assassin, Billy was known for his charisma and loyalty to friends. He spoke Spanish fluently and was well liked by the Hispanic community of New Mexico, who frequently hid him from authorities. He was known for his generosity, sharing the money from his robberies with poor families in the region. A particularly touching account comes from a Mexican lady who, decades later, told how Billy had given her a gold coin when she was a child. "He smiled at me and told me to buy a pretty dress," the old woman recalled. His eyes were not those of a killer, but of a lost boy. And here's a shocking revelation that few know. Documents found in the archives of the Pinkerton Detective Agency suggest that Billy may have been an informant for the federal government at some point. According to these records, government agents would have approached Billy while he was in prison, offering him a reduced sentence in exchange for information about other Western bandits. Could the legendary outlaw have actually been a secret collaborator with the authorities? This would explain how he managed to escape from so many seemingly impossible situations. A diary attributed to a federal agent of the time mentions a secret meeting with W.B. in an isolated cabin, where he allegedly received valuable information about the whereabouts of a wanted gang. Billy's name is never explicitly mentioned, but the initials and timing match perfectly. Fascinating, isn't it? And here's another well-kept secret. There is evidence that Billy the Kid may have had a son. A letter found among the belongings of a family in Tularosa, New Mexico, written by a woman named Paulita Maxwell, sister of Pete Maxwell, in whose house Billy was killed, suggests she had a relationship with the outlaw and became pregnant months before his death. The letter, dated 1882, mentions his son who will never know his father. If this is true, there could be direct descendants of Billy the Kid alive today, carrying the blood of the one who was considered one of the most notorious killers of the American Wild West. Paulita, according to historical records, never married and raised her son alone, giving him the Maxwell surname. The boy grew up without knowing the identity of his real father, at least officially. But persistent rumors in the region suggested that young Maxwell had the same piercing blue eyes and characteristic smile as Billy the Kid. When we observe all these fragments of history, these pieces of a puzzle that will never be completely assembled, we begin to understand that the truth about Billy the Kid, and about how many men he really killed, is much more complex and fascinating than the simple legend would have us believe. History is not just a list of facts, but a mosaic of perspectives, interpretations, and yes, sometimes intentional exaggerations. In Billy the Kid's case, separating the man from the myth is practically impossible after so much time. What we can say with some certainty is that the number of 21 murders is probably exaggerated. The most reliable historical evidence points to a number between 8 and 12 men killed by Billy the Kid's bullets. Still impressive, considering his short life. But perhaps more important than the exact number is understanding the context in which these deaths occurred. Most of them happened during the Lincoln County War, a conflict that had more to do with economic and political power than with simple criminality. Billy wasn't a psychopathic killer who killed for pleasure, but a young man caught in a cycle of violence that defined that time and that place. And ironically, it was his own death, or supposed death, that solidified his legend forever. By dying young, Billy the Kid joined that pantheon of tragic figures who never age in collective memory. James Dean, Marilyn Monroe, Jimi Hendrix, figures frozen in time, eternally young, eternally rebellious. Today, more than 140 years after his death, Billy the Kid continues to fascinate historians, filmmakers, and the general public. His story has been told and retold in books, movies, songs, and TV series, each version adding new layers to the myth. And perhaps that's the real power of legends, their ability to evolve, to transform, to mean different things to different generations. For some, Billy the Kid was a ruthless criminal. For others, a rebel fighting against a corrupt system. For still others, he symbolizes the unlimited freedom of the American Old West, with all its dangers and contradictions. One thing is certain: as long as we remain fascinated by his stories, Billy the Kid will never truly die. His legend will live on, as will the questions about how many lives were cut short by his bullets. And you? What do you think of this story? Is the number of 21 deaths real or exaggerated? Was Billy a cruel killer or a product of his time? Did he really die that night in Fort Sumner, or did he live for decades afterwards, watching his own legend grow? The beauty of these old stories is that there will always be room for new discoveries, new interpretations, new perspectives. And as long as there are people interested in hearing these stories, I'll continue here to tell them. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more fascinating stories like this one. Hit that bell to be notified whenever a new video goes live, and share with friends who also enjoy historical mysteries and surprising revelations. Next week, we'll unravel another great mystery from the past. Until then, research, question, and never accept the official story as the only truth. As we've seen with Billy the Kid, reality is always more complex and more fascinating than it appears at first glance. Big hugs and see you next time.